So come up from the atrium.
Hello, good afternoon. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's session. Thank you very much for trying to come on time. I know that we had a short lunch, but I appreciate, as does the panel, the fact that you're already in your seats, and I think out of that respect, we shall go ahead. So, my name is Amanda Kozumokwashi. I work for Christian Aid. I'm going to be your moderator for this session. And with me, you will see that we have some speakers that hopefully will not just make some presentations on subjects that are really important to all of us in the room, but that will stimulate us so that when the time comes for us to have conversations, that it's a real dialogue as much as possible, and that you will also be able to ask some challenging questions. So I think before I invite our first speaker to speak, I would just like to frame the discussion for us. This morning, you heard quite a lot about people and planet. We are talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, but the specialness of this particular conversation that we're having today is the fact that we're talking about religion and the Sustainable Development Goals. And I would really like this afternoon session to be that intersection, to really look at and answer the questions: what is the role of religion? What can we do differently to be able to do course correction? Our focus is going to be on prosperity and peace. It is fair to say that these two concepts of prosperity and peace can and must be the foundation of a thriving people and planet. It is also fair to say that these two concepts have been pulled apart, exploited, and distorted to feed human greed and power, to exploit the most vulnerable in our communities, and to perpetuate a culture of intolerance, violence, and conflict, all in the name of trying to attain prosperity, or in the name of trying to attain peace. It is these two concepts that we have to interrogate this afternoon. We know, and so does, I think, the rest of the world outside of these rooms, that religion sits at the very heart of prosperity and peace, both in terms of the good as well as in terms of the bad. I am not going to spend this afternoon or my precious last 1 minute to tell you example after example of how religion, different types of religions, people of faith from all walks of life, have been experienced at this point in time as actually not doing good vis-à-vis peace and prosperity. I have heard it mentioned that religious groups around the world run perhaps 50, if not more than 50% of all schools worldwide. If you look at our levels of investment in terms of our investment portfolios, they rival any wealthy associations or companies or individuals. Together, when you look at the wealth that we have, both in terms of capital assets, whether it's land, whether it's stocks, whether it's shares, whatever it is, religious groups are in the heart of economic activity. The questions that we're going to address this afternoon is, how can we, as people of faith and as religious groups, whether you're faith-based organizations in terms of specialized agencies, or whether you are churches or indeed religious institutions, how can we be at the forefront of course correction? There will be 3 subjects that we're going to cover. We're going to cover, in the first instance, we're going to look at work and growth, and then we're going to look at energy, production and consumption, and then finally we're going to have a discussion on sustainable development and sustainable peace. But it's all in the context of, let's have an honest and candid conversation about being part of the problem and being part of the solutions. So without further ado, I would like to invite Reverend Swami Agnivesh to speak. So thank you very much. I have cut the time short for everybody, so they have 10 minutes. Can I remind the clock, please? We are on the clock. 10 minutes is the cutoff time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Amanda Koji Mukwashi. And thank you, Cardinal Turkson, and all my friends here in Vatican for giving me this honor to come back once again to talk about something which is very, very close to my heart. My credentials, hello. As you might be reading, I'm chairperson of the Bonded Labor Liberation Front. It doesn't sound anything religious. Huh? On the contrary, I'm fighting for the liberation of those who are victims of religious mindset. That means caste system, which is fatalistic attitude, which is gender bias or against women. So all of these things, biases, I have been fighting for last more than 50 years, since 1968. Although I was born into a very, very orthodox Hindu Brahmin family 80 long years ago, but when I grew up with all the rituals and dogmas and superstitions and miracle mongering, etc., and when I studied the Vedas, Upanishads around the age of 17, 18, I decided to walk away from that organized religion and dogmas and superstitions. And now I no longer call myself a Hindu or a Muslim or whatever. If I am, I'm all. So, and in this way, I would like to take the universal spiritual values of the Vedas and the Upanishads, which are at the core of my heart. And I was very much inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, whom I read when I was in prison, 11th time in India, during emergency in 1976. And there he came up with a very profound, meaningful suggestion for development. He said that development should start from bottom upwards, not trickle down, not percolate. And when I said, my goodness, that means the poorest of the poor must enjoy the benefits of our development first. He was himself inspired, Gandhi, by European philosopher unto this last. And when I was very much inspired, I decided that this will be my life's mission. When I came out of the jail, I became a legislator. One of the northern states, became Minister for Education. But the challenge was too big, and I resigned everything, and I plunged myself into the liberation movement of all our modern-day slaves in India. Very close to New Delhi, hardly 25 kilometers south of our federal parliament and federal judiciary. And to my great shock, I found millions and millions are suffering in the plight with the plight of modern-day slavery, millions. And nobody would agree. In fact, I was threatened to be killed by the very chief minister under whom I had worked as an education minister. And he said, if you talk about this nonsense, bonded labor system in India, in my state, I'll have you killed. But then I had to go underground and fight another 8 months, and then went to the Supreme Court of India. And first public interest litigation came out of my petition. And the historic landmark judgment of the Supreme Court once again reiterated what the Constitution of India had said way back in 1950. Every Indian citizen has a fundamental right against every form of forced labor. And any forced labor becomes a bonded labor if he or she is being denied minimum wage as fixed by the government. And when I apply this very yardstick of the Constitution, of the law of the land, and the Supreme Court, today I find minimum, please listen, minimum 500 million Indians languishing in conditions of modern day slavery, which we call euphemistically bonded labor system. And millions of them are children, children below the age of 14. And children should be in schools, studying, playing, dreaming, but they're not so. 100 million children are just not in schools. 100 million, what are they? Where are they? You can easily imagine. They're out there working in the farm, in the mines, in the quarries, or in some other job. So this is the plight, this is the reality of our Indian situation. And this I'm saying with my experience of traveling all over South Asia, Nepal, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, etc. And I've also been associated with the UN, the Voluntary Trust Fund on Contemporary Forms of Slavery, of which I was chairperson for long 9 years in Geneva. Now, friends, much as I've got a lot to say, but at the very outset, let me be very honest, as the chairperson has told us to be. Religion as such, as I said about myself, may not be true for you, is more of a problem than a solution. Because most of these problems have been created by us. And I said, almost all of those 500 million bonded laborers, unorganized labor, victims of modern day slavery, they come from the lowest caste. Who creates the caste system? Not the Indian Constitution, not the United Nations, not any secular body. We religious people created it. And then who creates this gender bias? Patriarchal, all of us mostly patriarchal. And women have been denied equality for ages, and particularly even in our own times. So this is the real plight of our situation. And I would like to say that today, with 500 million bonded laborers in India, and with 100 million children who are not in schools, those who are victims of child slavery, we have got nearly 200 million who are at the bottom rung, that is untouchable, lowest caste people, 200 million. And 100 million of indigenous people whom we call Adivasis, who are being dispossessed day in and day out in the name of development. Their land and forest rights and mineral rights, everything is being taken away. And multinational corporations and big corporates, at the behest of the government, they are taking away all the land at the gunpoint and dispossessing them and reducing them to migrate and then to become bonded labor. Their women, the children, the girls are being sold in the brothel market. Now, this is a very, very stark reality I'm pointing out. You may not agree with me because what you read about India is the fastest emerging economy in the world, 7.5% of GDP. I don't understand what do you mean by GDP, gross domestic product. Recently, very recently, our finance minister on 1st of February, presenting the budget, he said, we have 420 million unorganized labor, just this 1st February, and their contribution to GDP is more than 50%. But there is no benefit going to them. And that's why he announced old age pension after the age of 60. And day before yesterday, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi, going for elections any day next month, he announced 3,000 rupees at the age of 60. At the age of 60, provided the young man at the age of 18 starts contributing 55 rupees per month, and anybody older, 29 or 30, contributing 100, 200 rupees per month, then only she will be entitled to this pension of 3,000 rupees, which is less than 35 euros a month. So you can just imagine what a joke we are playing with our people. We call them contributing 50% of our gross domestic product. 420 million the government has exceeded. We are saying 500 million. And yet, no law is being implemented, no constitution is being implemented, rather they are being dispossessed. The indigenous tribals are just being cheated of their constitutional right under Schedule 5 and Schedule 6. Very recently, 6-7 months ago, when I went to a place in Jharkhand, interior of our tribal belt, to sensitize our tribal communities about their land rights and mineral rights, I was attacked by a mob lynch mob attacked me, brutally assaulted me, and they wanted to kill me because I was going to empower those least among the last. 17th of July, to be very precise, this last July. If I'm surviving, it's due to God's grace. So I think bell is ringing, huh? Yeah, the bell tolls. You know. So we have Article 1 of the UN Charter, which says we are all born equal. But are we? Article 4 says no place for any slavery. But here is a classic case of India with the highest number of bonded labor and modern day slavery in India. We have in our country Article 21 of Indian Constitution, which guarantees fundamental right to all citizens, right to life with dignity, right to life with dignity, but no right to work. How can you have a right to dignity and no work? So all of these are contradictions, and therefore it's high time that we people who owe our allegiance to our Creator, the God, the Divine, we should mean business. And we should question these politicians, the policy makers and the corporates and everybody who are ruining this whole planet, ruining this whole system. And therefore, if we have really that courage to speak truth to power, as I see Pope Francis has, and that's why I salute him. And I feel that this is high time that we should feel challenged. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Reverend Agnevesh. I'm really pleased that you also managed to talk about women in particular. Of course, you know, I have a special place in my heart for women. And just to say that women continue to bear multiple burdens in countries that are poor, in communities that are extremely patriarchal, and that they're sitting at the bottom of the food chain. They carry the world on their shoulders, reproducing children for a world in conflict, producing food to feed consumption habits that are killing the planet, and struggling for basic essentials, receiving little to no dignity and no recognition for their sacrifice. I think it's really important that what you've mentioned about, as religious groups, we create some of the rules and regulations and the practices that are keeping women in those situations. Thank you very much. I would like to invite Monsignor Robert Joseph Vitillo. And just to say to everybody, the bios, I'm not going to read them. They'll be up on the website. Please have a look when you have a bit of time. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And I'm going to do away with all the honorifics. I hope Cardinal Turkson knows I'm grateful for his invitation. But before the bell starts ringing, and I want to make sure I move on to what I was supposed to say. So in its recently released report entitled Work for a Brighter Future, prepared by the Global Commission on the Future of Work, there was a sad lament about the following challenges to the future of work. 190 million people are unemployed, of whom 64.8 million people are youth. 344 million jobs need to be created by 2030, in addition to the 190 million jobs to address the needs of those already employed. 300 million workers live in extreme poverty, less than $1.90 per day. 2.78 million people die every year as a result of occupational accidents or work-related illnesses. Wage growth declined from 2.4% to 1.8% between 2016 and 2017. Women are paid approximately 20% less than men, and many of us men, even religious men, Madam Chairwoman, also keep women very close to our hearts as well. Between 1980 and 2016, the richest 1% of the world's population received 27% of global income growth, whereas the poorest 50% received only 12% of such growth. The author, Jay Pfeffer, succinctly summarizes these present-day obstacles to equitable and solidary growth as follows, I quote, "As companies obsess over their carbon footprint," and that's going to get me in trouble with the panel that spoke this morning, "they would do well also to consider their effects, their footprints on the human beings, a carbon-based life form who work for them." Since I am tasked with offering the Catholic Church perspectives on this topic, I will highlight just a few of the very, very many papal commentaries over the years on these situations. During a Mass to observe the year 2000 Jubilee celebration for workers, St. John Paul II urged the human family at the beginning of the third millennium, I quote, "to address the economic and social imbalances in the world of work by reestablishing the right hierarchy of values, giving priority to the dignity of working women and men and to their freedom, responsibility, and participation." In an address to the 48th Social Week for Italian Catholics, Pope Francis expressed anguish over the exploitation and uncertainties faced by many laborers. I quote, "Precarious work is also an open wound for many workers who live in fear of losing their job. I have heard this anguish many times, the anguish of losing one's job. This is immoral. This kills. It kills dignity. It kills health. It kills the family. It kills society." End of quote. Concern about the ethical relation between work and economic growth and business development is not confined to a recent chapter in the Church's history. Writing at the time of the Industrial Revolution, both about the pension for profit and its consequent abuse of workers, Pope Leo XIII issued his landmark encyclical letter entitled Rerum Novarum. He declared with forceful conviction, I quote, "the labor of the working class, the exercise of their skill, and the employment of their strength in the cultivation of the land, in the workshops of trade, is especially responsible and quite indispensable." End of quote. 40 years later, Pope Pius XI insisted, I quote, "It is a scandal when dead matter comes forth from the factory ennobled, while men there are corrupted and degraded." End of quote. St. John the 23rd warned, I quote, "If the whole structure and organization of an economic system is such as to compromise human dignity, to lessen a man's sense of responsibility or rob him of opportunity for exercising personal initiative, then such a system is altogether unjust, no matter how much wealth it produces or how justly and equitably such wealth is distributed." Pope Benedict XVI reflected on the present-day situation of mobility of labor, which he associated with a climate of deregulation, and acknowledged certain positive aspects in this phenomenon, I quote, "because it can stimulate wealth production and cultural exchange." Nevertheless, he also recognized that, I quote, "uncertainty over working conditions caused by mobility and deregulation when it becomes endemic, tends to create new forms of psychological instability, giving rise to difficulty in forging coherent life plans, including that of marriage. I cannot conclude this reflection without citing labor migration, which, when it is undertaken by both employers and workers in a voluntary, regular, and orderly fashion, and under decent work and just wage conditions, represents a good case example for the positive association between work and growth. And I'd like to share some of the 2015 findings by the McKinsey Global Institute in this regard. International migrants constituted 3.4% of the world's population, but contributed 9.4% to the global gross domestic product. Low and middle income skilled workers together contribute about the same amount as high-skilled migrants to global GDP. Over time, resettled refugees compare favorably to the total United States population as measured by personal income, self-employment, college education, home ownership, and computer literacy. And developed states place the most restrictions on migration, but garner most of its benefits. They host 65% of the world's migrants, but realize more than 90% of migrants' absolute global GDP contributions. I sincerely believe that this evidence demonstrates the positive impact of labor, even when it is undertaken by newly arriving migrants and refugees, on economic development across the gamut of high, middle, or low-income countries, and at global through local levels. The lens through which the Catholic Church-related teaching reads and interprets such trends, however, moves far beyond the economic sphere to that of integral human development. Thus, Pope Francis makes the striking point that migrants and refugees are, I quote, not pawns on the chessboard of humanity, but children, women, and men who leave or who are forced to leave their homes for various reasons, who share a legitimate desire for knowing and having, but above all, for being more. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So both our first two speakers really, I think, are flagging up some issues there for us to just quickly grapple with, hopefully for the next 5-10 minutes. I want to pick up some words from Monsignor Vitello. You said something about, dignity in society. I think I just want to really highlight that word, dignity, because there's something to be said about our current economic system, which is hardwired to rob people of their dignity. It is hardwired to serve the wealthy at the expense of the majority who have little to nothing. So I think it's important for us to really look at that. Can I just open up for questions that you might have? I will take some from here, and from there. And then I would also like to hear from those of you who are not necessarily from a faith organization, but are here because you want to work with us. The gentleman in front of me, yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. My name is Alessandro. I'm from the Office of Public Affairs of the Baha'i Community of Italy. My question is in regard to the idea of empowerment, I guess. So I want to raise this issue of empowerment because we talked about development, and we see what do we see as the engine of development? I think sometimes when we think of the SDGs, we see that this engine is actually people that are in conditions of power, people that have technology or institutions. But perhaps what we really need to, or to be talking about, is how can we create universal participation. And as part of this, perhaps the role of young people is critical. And I just want to raise a question that might be an elephant in the room, but especially perhaps in the Western world, like young people are sort of disconnected with the institution of religion. They're not able to connect with religion as being a source that can empower and can call on the deepest values of that all religions talk about. So how can we bring about this empowerment for religion to actually get the help of young generations in owning these goals?
Yes, the lady up there, right at the top there. And then I will have the gentleman. I can't see very well from here. So the lady there, and then the gentleman there, and then the lady over there.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for your presentations. I'm Alice Coy Martinez from Pax Christi International. I would like to support the call that is made for young people. Young people actually have many great ideas on how to implement the SDGs, such as, for example, through jobs for climate. And also, I would like to ask the panel, as there are several religious leaders in the panel, how do you see that religious leaders that have so many experience in the national context about how the SDGs are fulfilled and also are contributing to them can actually also link up to the implementation mechanisms of the SDG. So you have them at national level and also at the UN in New York. Yeah.
Very much. The shorter you keep the questions, the more we can have more people asking. No, up there, sorry. Yes.
Muy buenas tardes, yo soy Orlando Machado, soy de la JOC, Juventud Obrera Cristiana Internacional. Muchas gracias por su presentación, me parece que colocó elementos bastante interesantes. Sin embargo, quiero reforzar alguna pregunta, pero más específica en función de los 64 millones de jóvenes de los cuales hablaba en su presentación. Me gustaría saber cuál es la estrategia que existe o se está trabajando a lo interno de la plataforma católica para implementar estos ODS actualmente en el mundo. Pero específicamente si hay alguna estrategia y me gustaría saber, por favor, y si puede colocar o brindar más elementos de esas estrategias que existen hoy. Sobre todo vinculada con el movimiento obrero, por ejemplo, con sindicatos, si hay alguna estrategia en función de articular con las centrales sindicales en el mundo. Muchas gracias.
Me? No? Yes? Well, good afternoon. My name is Rima Al-Azhar, and I work with the United Nations FAO organization. And I've been working in development for more than 25 years. I've been listening to all the religious leaders speaking about the SDGs. And for me, I haven't really heard the case, the strong case. I have it myself, but I haven't heard the case as to what the faith-based organizations can bring to the development world. And I would love to hear from the religious organizations that are present here that basically, and this is something that I only learned after 15 or 20 years of working in development, that the building block of development is not actually economic. It's not, putting money, but actually giving dignity and hope. And this is only what the religious organizations can do. Actually, the development organizations cannot provide this dignity and hope that is necessary to do the economic development. That's number one. The second thing is that what I would like to hear is, since we're talking about behavioral change can only be achieved through emotions and not through intellect. What the development organizations provide is only technical solutions, but not going through the heart. That's the other thing that the faith-based organizations can do, and I would like to hear more about this. And the third thing is that the faith-based organizations are based for the longer term in the community, whereas the development organizations and the projects come for 3-4 years and then go. So there's this sustainability and accompanying of the community in the long run. I'll stop here. I have maybe another comment maybe tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think I will invite our speakers to just give some quick answers to those questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First and foremost, I would like to congratulate the person who raised this question about the religions, how much we can influence or even change the economic model. This is a very, very basic question. I know we are very, very good people, and we can talk and talk very good and goody-goody. But do we really mean business? Can we influence, change this predatory, please mind, predatory world economic development model, and which is also predatory to world ecological crisis? It's going to destroy, and we are nowhere. Once in a while, we may come together and talk good things, but who is going to take us seriously? So let us do something, some soul searching, and let's become a force. And similarly, this youth who are getting disenchanted from these organized, institutionalized religions, I'm happy about that. Because I find youth are getting more and more drawn to universal spiritual values. That means they see the whole of humanity as one family, and the crisis looming large, which is environmental or human rights or something like that. So that is bringing the youth closer together. They are transcending their narrow religious boundary in which they get born into. So this is a very hopeful sign. And let's not think it as a crisis. And the health and education systems all over the world, more so in my part of the world, getting privatized. Globalization means privatization. Privatization of natural resources, mineral wealth, everything. And privatization is for profit and for profiteering. Please understand. As long as we allow this privatization of natural resources, we cannot address the real question of bringing dignity to the last among the least. We cannot. We cannot provide employment to all. We cannot provide, employment is shrinking. And say jobless growth model has taken over. So this is the crisis of our day. So let us deliberate on how we can bring about change in the mindset of those who are making policies and the corporates who are holding the whole world to some sort of a, crisis. So this is the real challenge. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the different questions. And on the issue of young people, I'm not sure that I'm worthy to respond, but I want to call attention to my friend Richard from the International Young Catholic Students Association. I had the privilege of being an advisor to that group for many years, and I learned much more from the young people than I was able to give them. But there are many, many organized groups of young people, both in the Catholic Church as well as in many other faith-based organizations. And I disagree a little bit when I hear someone saying that young people don't find anything in religion. I find lots of very committed young people who are religious and find something much in the principles, but also in the practice. And then the issue of empowerment. I think it's not so much for those in power or even for structures like the Catholic Church to give power to people. They have that power already. God created them with that power. And so what we need to do is help them discover that and help them develop themselves, to empower themselves. And I think a lot of these movements like the Young Catholic Students are very much engaged in doing that. In terms of the issue about what FBOs are doing for development, We've been there for a long time, long before the United Nations. And so I agree that we have a lot to do with working with people in the communities, but we also have a lot to do in terms of the advocacy at UN level, and many of us are involved in that. So we help to shape these developments. We had many people of faith involved, even in the articulation of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. So we have a strong role in many fronts, not just one or the other. And then finally, the issue about behavior change only being emotional. I referred to integral human development as the basis for the Catholic Church's social teaching and many other faith-based teaching on this. And that includes all facets of us, our intellectual, our physical, as well as our emotional and our spiritual. Too many times we forget that. We can barely say the word at the United Nations, spiritual, without getting hissed by some of the representatives. So we need all of these elements to bring about a change in our world, including our own behavior change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know I saw quite a number of hands up. Can I just invite you to just hold on to your question? And I'm going to try and recover some time so that at the end, you can still have the opportunity to do so. But I think as we transition to the next subject on energy production and consumption, just to say that in terms of work and growth, and all the questions that came up around young people especially, and also the dignity and hope in terms of the role of religious organizations or religious institutions. I think it's really important to know that, or to understand that most of us in this room, we might be a little bit older than younger, yeah? I consider myself to be quite young.
I do too. I consider myself
Yeah,
too.
I think so. Just to say that, you know, quite a number of us have been, we were there in the Beijing World Conference 1995. We were there at the Nairobi Forward-Looking Strategies, and we were young people of faith, and we had the zeal, the energy, and the belief and the hope that we could bring about the change that was needed. So for me, I don't think that there's a time when young people can come in or don't come in. I think young people, as we talk and discuss, they're mobilizing around by themselves, you know, using all sorts of forms. I think what we need to do is to tap into that energy and bring it inside and see how we can work with them. So, you know, we can talk a little bit more, and I'm hoping that, you know, when we have the different sort of work groups, that you pick up some of these things in terms of, you know, what concretely can religious groups do to really harness this energy. And with those words, I would now like to invite Dr. Ivan Vera to lead us into a conversation on energy. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Mukwashi. Eminences, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is a real pleasure for me to have the opportunity to participate in this important event, the International Conference on Religions and the Sustainable Development Goals. I will be speaking about the issue of energy production and consumption within the context of the Sustainable Development Goal on Energy, which is SDG 7. Energy is indeed a very important factor to achieve sustainable development, as it has been discussed this morning by other colleagues. But I think we need to understand that energy is a means rather than an end. We don't need energy just to have energy. We need energy for heating, for cooling, for cooking, for transportation, for industries, etc. Therefore, energy affects all the dimensions of sustainable development, the social, the economic, the environmental dimension, and is a key factor for the people, for the planet, and to achieve prosperity and peace. The SDG 7 calls for ensuring access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all by the year 2030. It includes 5 targets, 3 core targets that are related to universal access to sustainable energy, renewable energy, increasing considerably the share of renewable energy and doubling energy efficiency. We know that these factors are critical for all the other SDGs of the 2030 agenda. But we know that one of the most important issues to make progress in relation to energy is the means of implementation, which is the topic of the other two targets. The other two targets are considered means of implementations, and they refer to international cooperation, investment, infrastructure, and technology. And however, if you ask me what is the progress that we've been making in relation to energy worldwide, I have to say that a lot of progress has been made in the last decade or so, but a lot more is necessary. But if the current trends continue into the future, none of the targets or the SDG 7 will be achieved by 2030. I'm sorry. Okay, since energy is a means rather than an end, then it's very important to understand and assess the interlinkage between the energy and the other SDGs. And one of the most important SDGs is the SDG related to eradication of poverty, which is SDG 1. We know that still 3 billion people in the world depend on solid, on sustainable biomass for cooking. We also know that 1 billion people live without access to electricity. And we know that most of these people are in sub-Saharan Africa and in the developing regions of Asia. About 80% of the population without access to sustainable energy live in rural, isolated communities where they do not only lack access to energy, but they also don't have access to proper sanitation, drinking water, or education. And this is the segment of the population that we can consider those who have been left behind and those who have very little hope to achieve prosperity in the future. We know that lack of sustainable energy correlates with high infant mortality, illiteracy, and low life expectancy, which are characteristics of people in poverty. And another way to look at the problem of, or the issue of energy consumption and production is by looking at this indicator, the per capita electricity use. And this brings out the issue of disparity and inequity. As you can see from this table, most of the countries, people in developed countries like in the USA, South Korea, Australia, and France, they consume over 7,000 kilowatt hours per person, while the majority of the poor people who live in developing countries consume a very little fraction of what the people consume in the developed world. As a matter of fact, most of the countries of the sub-Saharan Africa consume less than 500 kilowatt hours per capita. So it's a problem. We can talk about sustainable development and consumption, especially in the developed world, in the rich world, where people could try to conserve, consume less, produce less energy, but at the same time, we need help for the developing world with transfer of technologies and access to sustainable energy so that basic needs that are not met currently can be met. One important SDG that is very strongly related to energy is health. And we heard our colleague, Dr. Neira, this morning, I don't know if she's around, but talked very eloquently about the connection between energy and health. And I just want to say, she mentioned the statistics of the deaths due to outdoor pollution. But with respect to indoor pollution, there is estimated that 4 million premature deaths occur every single year due to indoor pollution, and this is more than the combined deaths of malaria, HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis. And this is due to the use of solid biomass inside the poor homes, And all these fumes are produce the indoor pollution that is mainly affecting women and children. Electricity is also very important because in clinics, every time that there is an emergency at night, it's very difficult to operate or to do things. Also, you need refrigeration for vaccines and medicines and basic foods. Education is another problem. 30% of the students go to school that do not have electricity, therefore they don't have access to internet, television, or computers. Energy also very well related to water and agricultural and food. And energy is a very important factor that could empower women. You know that women spend a lot of time collecting and carrying wood to their homes. And what I want to address in the last 2.5 minutes is that I believe that one of the most valuable approach to the Sustainable Development Goals is the holistic or integrated approach, in which you take several SDGs at the same time and you tackle them together. By doing this, you take advantage of synergies, you allow for efficient solutions, and you avoid negative unintended consequences when sectoral approaches are implemented in an isolated manner. And I just have a very short example. I hope I can say it in 2 minutes. Several years ago, we decided to give electricity to this school located in the Altiplanos of Bolivia in the Andean Mountains. It's about 50 students, 3 teachers. The idea was to give them lighting and so that they can have a TV set, a radio, and electricity to recharge phones. But when we got there and started to implement this project, we realized that the kids have health problems as well as malnutrition issues. The health problems were related to water mainly. And the school, it was not that the school did not have water. The school had water, but the water was too cold because this school is at 5,000 meters and the temperature varies between -10 to +15 degrees Celsius. So nobody could, I couldn't even wash my hands myself. And in the school, the kids get breakfast and lunches, and so they get contaminated food, and that was the source of the problem. So with a little bit of extra money, we installed a solar heating system for water, and we installed sinks and even showers for kids to be able to take showers. And the other issue of health was in respiratory problems, and we installed an efficient stove with a chimney to avoid the fumes and the indoor pollution. And the malnutrition, it was due because they could only consume potatoes, which is the cheapest product, agricultural product can be produced there. And with a simple greenhouse, the school is now producing other vegetables and raising other animals. So this is a very simple example, but I think it proves the synergies of working together in a holistic manner. And I think the different religions can help us with putting together all the SDGs in this holistic approach, especially in the issues of education and health. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ivan Vera, for that. I think in my mind, there's so many questions. So at the moment, I'm struggling with being the moderator and wanting to ask the questions. But I'm hoping that, we get a bit of a chance at the end of this to explore some of, I guess my question would be around the issue of justice in terms of vis-a-vis energy. Here, remembering what we heard this morning in terms of all the conversations around people and planet, and knowing that we need energy, and knowing that we need to change our consumption habits, so use energy, maybe fewer resources in terms of energy, but more efficiently. Where is the justice in that when we start looking at the SDGs and development of those communities that have remained behind? But maybe we can pick this up a little bit later. So now I would like to invite revered Swami Atma Priyananda to speak to us from a Hindu perspective.
Yeah, it's okay. So being a speaker in the post-lunch session is always a problem. The main task of the speaker is to keep everybody awake. And the energy level of the listeners as well as the speaker is not very high, as you know. So I would not talk about statistics which have been given to you since morning. So the moderator told me specifically to address the issue of how religions can help in the actualization of the sustainable development goals, and how, as was mentioned by a young person here, young people are moving away from religions, so how they can be inspired by religious doctrines. So I will just give you a sample of a chant, which is an old Vedic Shanti mantra, as we call it. Peace and prosperity is a subject of discussion. Peace in Sanskrit is called Shanti. This word has become very well known now. And there are Shanti mantras galore in the Upanishads and the Vedas. And remarkably, I'll start with this one, just to give you a sample. It is not only that human beings should be peaceful, we always want peace. Peace and prosperity of the United Nations perhaps thought human beings should live with dignity, with peace, with prosperity. What about animals and plants? What about the waters and the water bodies and the oceans and all the environment around you? So the ancient Indian sages realized that I can't be peaceful, you can't be peaceful unless the oceans are peaceful, the rivers are peaceful, the animals are peaceful, the plants are peaceful, unless there is peace prevailing everywhere, because we are a part of the entire environment called this earth. And we receive from the environment, and it is our duty to give back to society and to the environment as much as we receive and perhaps more. So there's just a sample of the chant in Sanskrit. Om Dyo Shantihi Antarikshagum Shantihi Prithvi Shantihi Apa Shantihi Oshadhaya Shantihi Vanaspataya Shantihi Vishve Deva Shantihi Brahma Shantihi Sarvam Shantihi Shantireva Shantihi Sama Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May peace prevail in the heavens. May peace prevail in the interstellar space. May peace reign the earth. May the waters be peaceful. May peace be on all the plants and herbs. May peace reign on the trees and environment. May peace rest with all the divine beings. May the Supreme Being and the Scripture be the abode of peace. May peace reign everywhere and every being. May that peace and more peace everywhere at all times. May the supreme peace come to me too by the grace of the Supreme. Om, peace, peace, peace. This is one of the oldest mantras in the Vedas. And there's another remarkable mantra which I will not chant for lack of time, which says that, but it's called a Madhu mantra. Madhu means happiness. Prosperity, peace, and happiness are intertwined, as you know. There's a remarkable statement in the Bhagavad Gita, the universal scripture of Hinduism, which says, Ashantasya kutas sukham. A person who is not peaceful cannot be happy. This is an important point to note, that when we talk about prosperity, we talk about energies, we talk about good living. All this is absolutely necessary. But the saddest people are those who are the richest. They have everything in the world, all the gadgets that you have, and all the equipment that they can get hold of, but they are deeply sad inside. And as you know, name and fame and celebrities are always deeply unhappy. This has been the experience. So prosperity cannot be purchased merely by gaining material goods. This has been the voice of religion, and the religion can contribute in a big way. Religious leaders living this and saying that I am so peaceful because I lack all that you have. Not that you should give up everything, but how much is much? How less is less? There's a small story which I always remember. A group of fishermen was relaxing. In India, people are called very lazy because when they don't go to work. All the time is up and doing and then shout and jump about. Then you're supposed to be extremely active. American Physical Psychology Association came up with a beautiful word called MAFA, M-A-F-A, which means mistaking activity for accomplishment. The busybodies and those who run about are supposed to be the most active, and the most active people whom we call Rajasic in Vedanta are the people who are always violent, shouting, and they can't be peaceful. You can't give sweet words to some people unless you are peaceful inside. The religious leaders first decide to show how they can be extremely peaceful even under the tensest circumstances, how they can be sources of joy and peace. Then young people were attracted. The story is a group of fishermen, they had done the job for the day, they were relaxing, playing with the children on the sand. MNCs, multinational companies, they came along and said, hey man, where is it? We're wasting time. Sir, the job is done, I'm relaxing with the children and playing around. Now get up, catch more fish. Sir, I don't need them. You may not need them, you can sell it, man. Oh, I can sell it? What do you again? You'll be prosperous, you'll get money. I don't need so much money, but then you can have buildings. I don't have the boats for it. Have motor boats. I don't have the people for it. Hire more people, go deep into the sea. Then what do? Build big, huge buildings, then relax and enjoy. This is exactly what I'm doing now. I don't have to go through the whole process to be happy and peaceful. I'm already happy. The most important, two important diseases which plague the modern society, one is competition, the other is aggressiveness, imitation. Management science, those who are managers, please pardon me for saying this, has been continuously telling us you should be competitive, you should be aggressive, and you should sell yourself. Just the opposite of what Indian wisdom taught us. Never sell yourself. Your talks, your thoughts, your behavior, your demeanor, your movement will reveal what you are. You don't have to advertise yourself. Advertisement and glamour mongering are the two great evils of society, the hype, the social media. Perhaps we would have been much better off if we were less prosperous, quote unquote, with less of technology. How the social media and the internet has killed our young men into not being able to think anything or studying anything. Books are not being studied anymore. People don't have time to quietly sit down and contemplate. We have huge air-conditioned halls. Sunlight is cut out. Unless you behave with grow with nature, unless you allow sunlight to come in, how can diseases go? The easiest way to get out of diseases is to expose yourself to sunlight, sometimes walk barefoot, and fresh air comes from the trees. But what we do is, we talk about the energy consumption, cut the whole thing as we are doing now in this AC hall, and 2,000 people breathing without having any outlet for the air to go. Therefore, it's no and then good to go for observing nature. What is this life so full of care? There is no time to stand and stare, the old poem which we read. One of the doctors, cardiologists once told me, the one important source of infection in hospitals is because of air conditioning. Air conditioning is necessary for medicines for people, but it is not always necessary. We get so much used to gadgets, so much used to so-called items of prosperity that we can't live without them. And two more diseases of the modern kind, intolerance, impatience, and lack of contentment. We are not content with anything. And we are happy for being unhappy. Because constantly, restlessly moving around discontent, and that is the kind of growth which we are projecting. Now, young people, I lived for young people for 50 years. They are disillusioned with all this. They want to meditate, they want to be calm without religiosity. Institutional religion is gone. Doctrines of the church and the Hinduism or Buddhism, doctrines are all gone. We have to have a scientific basis of religion, and we should not only address faith communities, but non-faith people who are deeply spiritual, craving for spirituality, craving for goodness, craving for being unselfish without a religious compulsion. Thank you.
Okay. I think that I want to open up for a few questions. I just want to remind us in terms of what this particular subsession is. It's about energy production and consumption. And there was a question, I think, that was asked, how can young people be inspired by religious doctrines? Actually, I would like to turn that question round and invite those of you who consider yourself to be young. No. Those of you who the world thinks you're young, defines as young, to have a go at what do you think is the answer to that? What has happened in that equation? So if the world defines you as young, can you just, the gentleman here.
Boy there, not gentleman.
So the two young gentlemen here, and then I have a hand over there, and then I have a hand over there. So I'll start with you, sir. Please keep your questions short.
Thank you. My name is Alan Otaro. I'm the director of the Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa. I'm based in Nairobi. Before attempting to answer the question, I'd like also to ask my own question to the panelists, especially Evan. I come from Kenya, and the current president, who is on his last term, aims to leave a legacy based on 4 key items, what he calls the big 4: food security, manufacturing, affordable housing, and universal healthcare. However, in recent weeks or months, he's been saying that he wants to focus now on the big 1, which threatens the achievement of all these big 4 and other things, and that's corruption. Because 1/3 of Kenya's budget, annual budget, goes into private pockets, according to the Auditor General. Beyond issuing pastoral statements, what do you think would be the role of faith leaders in addressing this issue of corruption?
Okay, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak for the second time today. I'm very happy to see that the question of young people is beginning to resonate in the whole, and I'm happy that most people consider themselves young, which means we have a lot of young people today, but somehow this becomes a problem because a lot of people consider themselves young and therefore don't leave the space for the young people to participate in the dialogue. Here we are talking about sustainability. You're young. I'm happy you're young, and I'm happy you're chairing the table today. Yeah, but we're talking about sustainability, and I don't want to criticize the capacity that we have in the whole. It's a great capacity that we like, and we have been talking about partnership. Perhaps tomorrow we will talk a lot more about partnership. But when we talk about partnership, we must begin to look at partnership from an intergenerational perspective. And if we have to bring these issues of transitioning, of bringing about development into the future, as we are hoping to, then young people must be protagonists in that case. But I know a lot of people say that young people are going away from the church or from the religious community. This is because sometimes we feel that they are not dealing with the authentic questions that we have in the world today. I'm happy that today you have brought religious people from different beliefs and faith to talk about issues that concerns us in terms of development. And how wonderful will it be that we mobilize even half of the same quantity of young people who are faith-based, who have some level of spirituality, to begin to have the same kind of dialogue. I know that in June, the Vatican is going to organize a follow-up to the Youth Synod, but I want to see already in the topics, in the discussion, how questions of development will resonate and be part of the discussions in that place. I think this is the only way and one of the way to strongly mobilize young people to add towards development. They are already doing it. They only need you to partner with them, and this is what we expect from those who consider themselves young and who continue to be young. So let's work together. I think we can do it better if we do so.
The first message is from my daughter. She's 7 years old. And she said, oh, you're going to Rome. If you're going to meet the Pope, who is the president of the world, tell him to save our trees and poor children. So first message from children. Then the second message is from her dad, myself. My name is Massimo Toschi. I'm working for the European Agency for Fundamental Rights. And the SDGs are not just about the global, about the South. They are about the entire globe, and also the rich European Union. And talking about the principle of leaving no one behind, based on the surveys and the data we collect, we also have those left behind in Europe. We do have Roma children, children which are right now invisible, children of immigrants, and persons with disabilities that do not have access equally to a lot of SDGs. And the root cause is inequality, SDG 10. So due to the discrimination, some children right now in Europe do not have access to energy, to water, to electricity, to education, to unemployment. So I really hope that from the outcome document of this event, it's not only a call about the global South, but also about the rich part of the world. Thank you very much.
I would like to pick a few women, please, if you don't mind. There's a lady up there, and can I see a couple more? There's a sister up there. Yes, yes, you over there. So we start, thank you.
Salam. I am Haja Sara from Philippines of the Department of Education, and I would like to raise the question, but before that, let me give the parameters of the question that I'll be giving. Education
you need to
plays,
be really brief, huh?
Yes, education plays a very important role in attaining our prosperity and peace in the world. Across countries, religious group and culture. My question is, how religious group can influence education of our youngs to develop the love of coexistence, love of God, fellow men, and love of our nature? That's the question. How can we bring these thoughts to the schools? Since we know that 3/4 of our children are in school, and if we want to invest on prosperity and peace, it must be in school.
Good afternoon. I'm from the International Coordination of Young Christian Workers. So in behalf of the young people, or I'm from the young Christian workers itself, you're talking this morning that we have all the skills, but also a big question also that I wanted to ask, how do you, especially the leaders here, the religious organization, how can you help the young to motivate them to do something, to create actions? Because as young, we have a lot of things we see. But sometimes when we do something, many of the people are trying to stop us. But also I understand as a young leader, in my personal perspective and my personal experience, I have my ups and downs. But this is part of the development. So how you will be able to help us, to motivate us, or to educate us? I think this is just want to state the C part of the situation, because this is really a root of the problem, why we are We always said, we are the future. The young people are the future. But we are not only talking about the future, also the present. So that is what I wanted to try to emphasize. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm really, really sorry. I'm not going to take any more questions for that panel discussion. I'm going to invite answers, but can I please can you keep your answers really brief? And there's a question that I want to highlight from my sister over there. You know, we run a lot of schools as religious institutions. If the people that are coming out of our schools are leading us into the states of the world in terms of consumption and production and energy use that we are in, then maybe there's something that we are not getting right. So we have it within our power and control to change something in the schools that we run. Dr.
This was a very dear subject to Swami Vivekananda, who was the founder of the Ramakrishna order to which I belong. He repeatedly said, education is the panacea for all evils. I'm very happy that our young delegate raised this question. Education, education, education alone is. So what kind of education are we giving? He says education is not the amount of information put into the brain and runs right there undigested all one's life. It is a transformation of character. Unfortunately, the entire United Nations document does not seem to be emphasizing the character building aspect of education. When we talk about nation building, transforming society, who does it? A human person. The human person has to have impeccable character whom lust and lucre will not be able to sway. And that person, who is that person? Who has a tremendous feeling heart, as vast as the skies, a deeply thinking brain where you can find a solution. And put these two together, capacity to be able to work out the solution come what may. Vivekananda said, if the entire world stands before you, sword in hand, ready to crush you out, will you still dare to do what you think is right? The point about the young people is they feel that the elders are too impatient to listen to them, and they don't enter into a dialogue. So we always are authoritative. However much we talk about democracy, I know you listen to me. And they say, I want to do something, I want to say something. And they're intensely idealistic and intensely unselfish. We have to tap on this, allow them to talk, and extremely gently we have to guide them.
Thank you. I think the question wasn't answered, though. So I think let's try and answer the question that that was flagged up, because, you know, it's within our control if we run education systems and schools. So what should we do, whether the SDGs, whether the United Nations documents, are, you know, have it or not? We are responsible and are in charge of the curriculum. What should we do to help to redefine and change our curriculum?
Education should have the three components.
No, just wait a second, sir. Sorry, my brother, if you don't mind. Let me just get the other colleague, and then I'll come back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very important issue, perhaps one of the most critical ones. And education is something that religions are heavily involved with. And I believe that religions, as well as those who are running the schools, have the opportunity to start creating awareness, but not only awareness, but also train themselves to then train the trainers in the new technologies. I mean, some of these new technologies, like renewable energy, like solar energy, are systems that are very inexpensive and they work independently. If the staff of the schools can be trained to then train people in the communities to be able to create awareness and to install and to have the electricity that is needed. I think that's something specific that can be done. Awareness, training, and also partnership. You know, you can work with partnerships through organizations that may be able to donate the funding or the financial assistance that is necessary. Okay, the question on corruption from the gentleman from or in Kenya. Well, it's well, again, it's very, very difficult, and we know corruption, I would say, it is the cancer to many countries, my country as well. But I think, again, the way to move forward is with partnerships. If with partnerships, probably with the private sector, and also using other means of implementation, like international cooperation, technology transfer, and international investment in the form that could be like the clean development mechanism, maybe, I mean, things, if it's related to specific SDGs like climate change or something like that. But that's all I can say. Sorry.
The formation of the curriculum, as was mentioned by somebody here, that the emotional content is totally neglected. We give information and the children pick up, no, you don't, teacher doesn't need to teach anymore. The Google says all. So they go to Mr. Google and Google tells them everything. So what does the teacher supplement? The teacher gives her life, but the information flows through the teacher. The life of the teacher will influence the child. So teacher has a very important role. So teacher education is much more important than the child's education, and the emotion, the heart to feel, the brains to think, and the hands to work. An integrated approach, a holistic approach of these two. And about corruption, if religious leaders and teachers can show to the world that they can't be purchased by anything, even if they're cut to pieces, they shall not swerve away from purity and truth. Why don't we do this? We talk about correction in other people. If half a dozen people stand up and say, our lives will show it. The children are they can easily detect you, so they can't cheat. The children are the most difficult to cheat. They'll immediately detect whatever you may say. You may talk about anything, but immediately they know from your body language, from the way you speak, from the way you conduct yourself, they immediately know. So if you can show examples of people with impeccable character, then the life will change. Corruption is there, of course. And usually the most religious a country, and the most spiritual a country, the most corrupt it is, like in India. And perhaps Italy, I don't know. You have all the religion in the world in Italy and India, but why is it happening? That is because religious leaders have perhaps failed.
Thank you very much. I can see a few hands that were really sort of saying, I really want to get my question in there. Actually, it was just one, so maybe I'll take it. You need to put your hand up.
It's not a question. Hello, thank you. It's an answer, actually. My name is Antoine Maksoud. I come from Lebanon, and I am the president of the International Catholic Conference of Scouting, Europe and Mediterranean. I think education is not only related to schools and to universities, and many here would agree, and everyone would agree, that also the organizations, youth organizations are responsible of this education. And scouting mainly, that is based on the respect of others and the love of nature, of course, because it's the creation of God and its animals. This is where we can have a lot of education there to be given to the youth and to youngsters. The SDGs are already implemented in the World Organization of Scout Movement, and we are working on this. And we are like 50 million around the world who are dealing with this issue. So thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much. Now, if you look at our program, we are supposed to take a coffee break. Yeah, we're supposed to take a coffee break. I have to say that I was feeling like there was a momentum there. but I think you probably need your coffee break, especially since we're going to have something this evening. And just to let you know what is coming after this, we will be talking about sustainable development and sustainable peace. And I think this for me is perhaps the sort of the crowning of our conversation this afternoon, because I am hoping that, you know, we can really have a bit of time to just not just listen to what is going to be said, but please come with also some of your own answers. I think that you know some of the examples of where conflict and where violence is taking place. I would probably extend that to gender-based violence that is taking place in many different environments. So let me leave you with a story as you go for your coffee break. I was in Zimbabwe a few months ago. Is there anybody from Zimbabwe here? That's a pity. I was in Zimbabwe and I visited one of the religious movements. I think they're part of the apostolic movement. They wear white garments. And I was very privileged and honored that they allowed me to attend their service because they're quite closed. And when I was talking to them, to the women, issues of no access to healthcare services, issues of early child marriages, issues of other just gender-based violence were very prevalent within that group, and it was accepted. Now, I could go ahead and give several different examples from different parts of the world, not just in Africa, Asia, Latin America. I could go ahead, Middle East. I think that I would hope that when we come back from the tea coffee break, let's really try and have that discussion. You know, Pope Francis has started a very good, I think, practice of being very honest and very open about very difficult conversations in our own household. So let's have them, but let's have them with a hope that comes from people of faith. We have 10 minutes for a coffee break. I don't know how we're going to manage that. Let's be back in 10 minutes. 10, 15 minutes. 15 minutes.
Le pagine della storia sono spesso rosse del sangue degli innocenti a nome della supremazia di una visione religiosa sull'altra. Se le religioni non riescono a collaborare in comune, non saranno testimoni sinceri davanti
It's almost time.
The moderator said that we should sit.
Hello? Hello? Okay, we're about to start. Can I ask that, thank you. I think we should start. Hello? Yes. I love discussions. Sorry? Thank you. I love discussions, and I think it's because I used to be a very quiet child, so I am making up for all those years when I used to sit very quietly, not saying anything in the home, and my father and my mom asking me, "What's wrong?" And I would say nothing. And I would just keep quiet. I'm sure those of you with teenage children probably can relate to some of that. So we're going to start, and we're going to keep to the same sort of rules that we had as before. So the two presenters, the three remaining presenters are going to present for 10 minutes each. And if I can ask the clock to stop at 10 minutes, please. Okay. And then the whole idea for me is that when we come to conferences such as this, especially for an afternoon session, it's really important that it's a dialogue and that it's not just presentations, but it's a conversation. And I saw quite a lot of people who wanted to contribute, either to ask questions or maybe to share their own experiences. So we're now starting the session on sustainable development and sustainable peace. We are living at a time when I think it's been described by quite a number of leaders as a broken world. And it's evidenced by so many different things that we've managed to discuss before. But I think for this afternoon, I'm looking at not just the spiritual brokenness of the world, but the impact of what the spiritual, economic, political brokenness has led to in terms of violence, in terms of conflict, gender-based violence, and just generally lack of peace. And the peace has to start from inside, going outside. And so I want to start this conversation again by telling you another very brief story. I am a village girl, so I grew up on storytelling. I attended CSW many years ago. I won't say how long, but many years ago. And there was a woman from Sierra Leone, and she'd been invited to talk about peace. And the first thing that she said was, I don't know what peace is. So I don't know how to even start talking about it. I grew up at a time of the Civil War. I am in my home. Gender-based violence is the norm. So when you ask me to talk about peace, I really don't know, because I have no lived experience of what peace is. So it's really important that I want us to be in the room, not just physically, but I want us to be in this space mentally and emotionally for this next discussion. Because without peace at the individual level, we're not going to have the peace that we need for the world to begin to heal and for us to develop a new relationship with each other and a new relationship with creation. So With that in mind, I would like to invite Maria Eugenia Di Paola, who's given me a hug today, so I'm very happy. Over to you.
Amanda? Up. Well, first of all, I would like to thank the Vatican, the dicasteries for the invitation, Pope Francis, Cardinal Taxon, Bishop Ayuso Guijot, Father Augusto, the Religions and SDGs team. I am deeply happy to be here. And I would like to devote this presentation to my father, Jose Maria Di Paola, who was my first and my most important teacher, together with my mother, on religions and sustainability. Sustainable development and sustainable peace are both sides of the same coin. Different scenarios can show us different possibilities that can be negative, passive, or proactive, depending on the relationship between peace and development. Armed conflicts and disasters are a clear demonstration of negative scenarios, connected with steps back and unsustainable societies. On the contrary, when there is no armed conflict or disaster, the scenario is better. Nevertheless, this condition is not enough for achieving sustainable development and sustainable peace. When there is a proactive construction in a coherent, consistent, and durable context, and social, economic, and environmental issues are considered in an integrated perspective, more possibilities for achieving sustainable peace and sustainable development will arise. Religions and faith-based organizations are key to promote and foster the agenda of sustainable development and sustainable peace. They have an invaluable ethical and practical scope that can foster and accelerate sustainable decisions. The interreligious dialogue is itself a value of deep cohesion to better live and build together a sustainable future, leaving no one behind. It is time to continue the process of building together upon the basis of positive roadmaps that are directly connected with Agenda 2030. Laudato Si is a clear milestone in this context, and as well as doctrine and practical documents from different faiths and religions, just as the Jewish Lands Investment Network, the Green Patriarch, the Athens Declaration, Confession of Accra, Lutheran WF Resolution, World Council of Churches documents, ISESCO action plans, among others. Okay. Okay. In this presentation, I will consider firstly some information about armed conflict and disasters in the world. After, I will analyze the concept of sustaining peace and sustainable peace, key aspects of sustainable development. And I will also point out specific experiences. Regarding the armed conflicts and disasters in the world, I would like to share some information that show some of the effects of armed conflicts and disasters in humanity. As you can see, violent conflicts researched in recent years often linked to global challenges from climate change to transnational organized crime. And the consequences are not only numbers, are people that are living in fragile and conflict-affected settings that are forcibly displaced because of armed conflicts. And regarding disasters, 1.3 million people lost their lives and 4.4 billion were injured due to climate-related disasters. Regarding natural resources that are vital for livelihoods, it was mentioned in the previous panels, and generally they are also commodities, and when there is no adequate management and benefit sharing of them, and the communities are not involved in the decision-making processes of their related business operations, tensions and conflicts can escalate into violence or contribute to aggravate pre-existing conflict dynamics. In addition, climate change leads to increase the likelihood of conflict because of its different impacts. Considering this situation, the concept of peace is key, and I would like to speak about sustaining peace. Sustaining peace, a concept endorsed by the UN General Assembly and the Security Council, is directly related to stop vicious cycles of violent conflict, with emphasis in a preventive and long-term perspective. In January 2017, a high-level dialogue on building sustainable peace for all, connecting sustaining peace with sustainable development, took place, and its main conclusions are and show that these concepts are strongly linked and mutually reinforcing, that must be driven by national and inclusive ownership involving all segments of societies, including women and youth, and that to sustain peace effectively and establish an enabling environment for sustainable development, attention must be accorded to conflict prevention, to addressing the root causes of conflict, to ensuring the rule of law and a strong and accountable institution, to the effective management and equitable distribution of resources, as well as to the protection of human rights. Consequently, we can affirm that the 2030 Agenda is a platform and an integral tool for peace-building processes, and you will see different key aspects related to it in the screen. I will comment specifically the first one, because I think that it is important because of the time, but I would like to highlight that we live with conflicts. Conflicts are part of our lives and societies, and that any change that may disrupt our status quo can also create antagonistic perspectives. And the cardinal challenge of every society is to navigate the conflict peacefully. And prevention is directly related to addressing risk factors before escalating into violence. You will see the importance of rule of law and strengthening transparent, inclusive, and accountable institutions, empowering women and youth for peace and sustainable development, as it was mentioned before, building resilience and the early recovery approach, resilience of societies, resilience for adaptation and mitigation of climate change, a sustainable approach of migration, the management of natural resources for peace and sustainable development, considering not only the importance of the inadequate management of resources and equitable sharing, but also that many good practices that are taking place in the territory need to scale up fast. And the triple benefit approach that is related to the integrality of Agenda 2030, considering its social, economic, and environmental aspects in order to eradicate poverty and hunger. In the panel on food and water, the concept of maintaining diversity and regeneration, as well as benefit sharing, was considered and reaffirmed. So we can see the links between and among the different issues that we are considering during this day. And as mentioned at the beginning, religious and faith-based organizations have a key role regarding Agenda 2030. And the following are positive examples of the work that religions and faith-based organizations are doing, and they are only specific examples of an enormous everyday effort. One is the Interreligious Alliance for Latin America and the Caribbean, created in 2014, that aims at promoting the involvement of faith-based organizations to contribute to SDGs, prioritizing the reduction of inequality in and between the countries of the region. The second example are the SUG guidelines, for me, a really important example of interreligion action for sustainability, because these guidelines describe investment criteria and a strategy of the different religious perspectives to support the creation of a sustainable work. The faiths own approximately 8% of the habitable land and 10% of the world's total financial investment, and it is estimated that about $3 trillion of investment money are mobilized among the 8 faiths and their organizations. These 8 faiths wrote the guidelines in environmental and sustainable development projects. There are other 2 examples in Colombia and in Argentina where we are working from UNDP with the government and religious organizations in order to identify common grounds and also identify territorial impact. Just 10 seconds. I would like to close my words remembering a conversation with a wise senior friend. We were talking about the concept of faith. And he, a survivor of Hiroshima, told me that for him the image of faith was the day after the bomb, when he could see different churches and creeds working together for the reconstruction. Thank you very much. Peace be with you.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you. I will move speedily on to Dr. Abdul Majid Tribag.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, it is difficult to be the last one who speaks. Last one in the day, not in the session. But I think we will shift to another language to make people wake up. Yeah, Arabic is my mother tongue, but unfortunately, there is no translation. I will do in French. So just to start my speech, I will say that there is very difficult part of definitions of these words. What is prosperity? What is peace? What is sustainability? What is development? We are surfing on such semantic words on which it is very difficult to be really on the same line. And to say it fluently and more easily, I go to French and say that en 2015, j'avais l'opportunité de voir le ministre de l'Environnement d'un pays que vous connaissez tous et qui connaît la guerre, c'est la Somalie. Et comme étant un patriote qui venait défendre l'intérêt de son pays, il a demandé à ce que l'organisation l'aide pour une formation dans le domaine de l'environnement, building capacity for this country. Nous lui avions promis jusqu'à $10,000 pour faire un training sur complément bien sûr du pays à l'échelle nationale, mais il faut qu'il fasse vite de faire un concept note, une note conceptuelle, et d'envoyer le programme rapidement parce que c'était le mois d'octobre avant la fin de l'année financière. Aucune réponse. Quand j'ai eu l'occasion de voir le responsable de la Commission nationale de l'ICESCO et de l'UNESCO en Somalie, il m'a dit que le ministre est mort dans une explosion devant l'hôtel. Sans la paix, il n'y a pas de développement. Toutes ces histoires-là ne valent rien tant que la paix n'est pas là. Et je pourrais dire que ces deux derniers mots sur lesquels nous sommes maintenant dans ces 5 P, la paix et la prospérité, sont les 2 mots essentiels qui doivent normalement être à l'avant-garde dans la définition des 17 objectifs. Et je passerai pour dire que si l'on regarde les 5 fondements, il y a des fondements matériels qui s'adressent à la planète, qui s'adressent aux humains. Il y a des fondements procéduraux qui s'adressent aux partenariats, aux institutions et aux lois et aux vœux de coopérer. Mais il y a des fondements subjectifs et sur lesquels nous avons peut-être la malchance d'être les derniers. C'est ceux de la prospérité et de la paix qui ont un caractère qualitatif, horizontal, à haute variabilité de définition et de spéculation éthique et culturelle et même religieuse. Et je dirais que dans les 17 objectifs, si vous essayez de les lire tous, le mot prospérité n'apparaît pas dans les 17 objectifs. Même dans leur texte explicite à l'intérieur, vous trouvez à un certain moment, et nous allons le voir, la notion de prospérité partagée. Partagée comment? La prospérité pour certains, c'est d'avoir un dîner, d'avoir un déjeuner. Pour certains, c'est de changer la voiture, ou d'aller acheter Pierre Cardin ou acheter quelque chose d'autre l'année prochaine, ou de faire le tour du monde en 90 jours. Ça dépend, c'est une affaire différentielle entre laquelle il est difficile de s'accorder, mais qui fait quand même objet d'un certain consensus à l'échelle des organisations, à l'échelle des thématiques, à l'échelle de toute la littérature qui circule à l'intérieur de cette histoire de développement durable. Donc aucun objectif n'évoque clairement le mot prospérité. Il reste donc, la prospérité reste insidieuse. Tout un chacun me dirait que si on travaille pour la santé, pour l'éducation, etc., c'est de la prospérité. Les 17 objectifs incarnent tous, y compris l'objectif 16 qui parle de la paix, le même objectif global, celui de la prospérité matérielle de l'humanité. L'être humain n'est pas divisible. L'être humain, il est composé du côté matériel et de l'âme, du côté spirituel. Quand vous essayez de le développer sur un front, vous créez un déséquilibre qui est éternalisé et sur lequel lui-même, sans se rendre compte, il est en train de courir sans réaliser réellement ces objectifs de prospérité auxquels il a tenu depuis le départ. Aucun objectif donc n'évoque explicitement la composante culturelle ou religieuse comme levier à promouvoir dans les développements durables. Il y a ce sentiment que la religion, la culture, les mœurs, les moyens habituels dans les traditions qui faisaient la relation homme-nature ont été occultés dans cette définition des 5 P et même des 17 objectifs. C'est vrai que tout le monde en tient compte, il dira qu'elle est là, mais on verra que ce n'est pas très vrai. Quand on regarde dans les 17 objectifs par rapport à celui qui parle de la notion de paix, le texte dans la signature du traité des 17 objectifs parle du fait qu'un monde libéré de la peur et de la violence est escompté par les décideurs qui se sont réunis en 2015 et qui ont fait cette définition et ces objectifs. Nous aspirons, ils disent, à un monde où soient universellement respectés les droits de l'homme et la dignité humaine, l'état de droit, la justice, jusqu'à voir, enfin, en bas de page, je m'excuse de ne pas tout lire, vous l'avez devant vous, jusqu'à parler que le potentiel humain soit pleinement réalisé et la prospérité soit partagée. Le comment, personne n'en parle. La définition de la prospérité, telle qu'elle apparaît dans les textes des 17 objectifs. Nous sommes déterminés à faire en sorte que tous les êtres humains aient une vie prospère et épanouissante et que le progrès économique, social et technologique se fasse en harmonie avec la nature. Tout ce qu'il y a de très général. La paix, nous sommes déterminés, ils disent, à favoriser l'avènement de sociétés pacifiques, justes et inclusives, libérées de la peur et de la violence. En effet, il ne peut y avoir de développement durable sans paix, ni de paix sans développement durable. Personne ne dira non, mais quand on voit l'objectif 16 lui-même, comment il est défini, il dit qu'il va promouvoir l'avènement de sociétés pacifiques et inclusives aux fins du développement durable. Donc la paix, c'est la base, même dans l'esprit de la rédaction elle-même, lui-même, pardon. L'objectif 3 de l'éducation, et sur lequel nous avons parlé tant ce matin, c'est-à-dire qu'il faut préparer les générations futures à faire la paix entre elles. C'est faire en sorte que les élèves qui acquièrent les connaissances et les compétences nécessaires pour promouvoir le développement durable. Qui décide d'ici 2030? C'est les élèves ou ce sont les vieux d'hier? Parce que si on a des objectifs 2030, il faut parler aux grands qui sont déjà sur les bancs de la décision. C'est bien de ramener l'éducation au niveau escompté et de faire en sorte que la coopération internationale le fasse, mais les conflits continuent, la dégradation continue et l'acharnement sur les richesses continue à l'échelle mondiale. L'avant-propos lui-même ne donne pas beaucoup de choses. Je m'excuse de sauter parce que ici c'est le rapport 2018 sur le développement durable. Nous voyons bien que dans le texte, il ne parle que des conflits. Il dit que les conflits, les changements climatiques et les inégalités croissantes aggravent les difficultés. Parce que les expressions chiffrées sur les objectifs sectoriels liés à la pauvreté, la nutrition, la santé, etc., ne sont pas très satisfaisants. Dans le détail, l'objectif 16, il dit que nous avons un tableau noirci des conflits internes ou entre pays. Ça, c'est un constat, ce n'est pas une action. Si on est là pour dire demain et prendre un cliché de la planète pour dire qu'elle est en train de s'entretuer, on ne fait avancer la question de la paix ni de la prospérité en rien. Et depuis 2015, il avance le rapport, 1019 défenseurs des droits de l'homme, journalistes, etc. ont été tués dans 61 pays, ce qui signifie qu'une personne est tuée chaque jour alors qu'elle exerce son travail pour informer le public et pour construire un monde à l'abri de la peur et du besoin qu'on a défini en 2015. Ici, c'est le rapport 2018, après 3 années sur le développement durable. Je ne vais pas m'attarder parce qu'on m'a donné 10 minutes. Donc, je m'excuse, on est tous un peu frustrés de ne pas trop en discuter, mais peut-être dans les discussions, on en aura. Parce qu'ici, un point de vue de religion est essentiel. Le titre, c'est la perspective religieuse. Il n'y a pas de chose, il n'y a pas d'environnement islamique. Il n'y a pas d'environnement chrétien. L'environnement, c'est humain. Et par conséquent, toutes les perspectives doivent, dans un tronc commun essentiel, faire avancer les choses et imposer leur présence sur le plan décisionnel. Ne pas venir en rescousse en tant que pompier de la crise à la fin de... Ça sonne déjà. Hein. Alors, en conclusion, je crois que j'ai le droit de la lire, même après 1 minute. Les religions sont en mesure de dynamiser les principes naturels de la durabilité. Entre la terre et l'au-delà, nous sommes tous passagers. Dans 40 ans, vous reviendrez à Rome, tous les visages ici dans la salle, grosso modo, sauf les jeunes qui ont parlé tout à l'heure. Et j'espère qu'ils ne vont pas partir avant de prendre la décision. Au-delà de la prospérité entre le corps et l'âme, de la vraie richesse et de la pauvreté de l'humain et des signes sincères de la paix envers les hommes, l'univers et envers les lois divines dans la création et son fonctionnement. La Terre n'est pas une machine, elle a ses lois. Et tant qu'on ne les respecte pas, elle prend sa revanche, même après un certain temps, sans vous le dire, et ni sur le quand et le comment. Les motivations agrémentées par la croyance de l'homme dans ces formes d'adoration constituent un atout majeur dans la mise en œuvre des ODD. Les religions et croyances doivent s'allier pour un avenir meilleur de prospérité humaine. Et je crois que tout le monde bouge. Et je cite en finalisant que nous avons vécu le Laudato Si. Nous avons vécu par la suite l'Islamic Declaration on Global Change en 2015. Et actuellement, et je termine, la stratégie de cette année des Nations Unies 2018, Strategy of United Nations to work with faith-based organizations to protect environment and achieve sustainable development, et qui, la semaine prochaine au Kenya, au Parlement mondial de l'environnement, et nous avons l'honneur et l'occasion d'être là-bas, l'initiative qui a été créée après cette stratégie des Nations Unies, le Faith for Earth Initiative, il a plus de 10 side events à l'intérieur de cette assemblée qui va rassembler plus de 5000 des responsables, des décideurs, des ONG, etc. à Nairobi la semaine prochaine. Et je termine en disant que le titre de notre workshop là-bas, c'est d'essayer de sortir un peu, on a trop parlé. Le titre qu'on a donné, c'est From Theory to Practice, the Islamic Perspective to Protect Environment and Achieve Sustainable Development. Il y a beaucoup de projets sur la palette et qui peuvent être échangés comme expérience. Et je m'excuse d'avoir été si rapide et aussi peut-être pas très clair sur certains aspects. Et merci à tous et à toutes. Merci.
Okay. I haven't asked the question yet. Okay. Thank you very much to our speakers. So a key conversation, quite a number of things sort of coming out of there. Sustainable development, sustainable peace, you know, how do we live with that? Because there is to achieve sustainable development, there's going to be some disruption, and disruption causes conflict. And so how do we do that and do that in a just way? Earth is not a machine. I will take questions. This time I'll start from this side, and then I'll go this way. So the lady here, and then the lady behind, right at the back there, the gentleman here, and then I will come back to my colleague from Christian Aid. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is for Maria.
And I'm Laura Koch from Million Peacemakers. So we are really into this issue about peace in the world. So you mentioned the SAG guidelines, and if you can expand more, why do you base your faith in these, and if you can be more specific on this, please. Thank you.
Thank you. I will take all the four first, and then we can come. Oh, do I have? It was the lady over there. Can you just put your hand up so they can see you? Yeah, that one.
Hello, my name is Petra, and I am representing the Catholic Girl Scouts, the International Catholic Conference of Guiding. I just wanted to add, you was thinking about how to bring the theory of the Global Development Goals into the practice, and this is what we as Scouts and Guides do. If you think about 10 millions of Girl Scouts all around the world in 150 countries, and another 28 million of Scouts all around the world, who every day works for the Global Development Goals, because in different communities, different countries, they have different programs, which includes all of these goals, we do come with the practice.
Thank you. I think it was the gentleman over here. Yes, yes, you, sir.
Thank you for giving me the floor, even though I am a bit older than old. Francesco Lenci from Published Conferences on Science and World Affairs. 1.5 years ago in this room, we had an important conference to discuss together possible steps toward a world free of nuclear weapons and integral disarmament. In that occasion, Pope Francis firmly condemned not only the use of nuclear weapons, but the possession of nuclear weapons. Today, the situation is significantly worse. The entire regime of our control is in crisis. And about 15,000 nuclear warheads are still deployed in the world. We have 9 nuclear countries. If you want, we can discuss later in the details some of the key points. The Iran nuclear deal, the INF treaty, the new START, which will expire in 2021. It seems to me that the risks of nuclear war are not considered as real, as dangerous as they are. And I believe that we must have very clear that there will be no peace if the world will be full of conflicts, not only of conflicts, but a new arms race and the collapse of arms control regime. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that contribution. Abena.
Much, my CEO.
Can you put your hand up?
Thank you very much. So I'm Abena Fari, and I work for Christian Aid. I'm based in the Ghana office. With regards to forging an interreligious dialogue in development, and particularly when we talk about peace building, I'm curious to know from the panelists how this plays out in your various spheres. I imagine it's not entirely a bed of roses. It would have its highs and lows. I would be very happy to hear from the panelists how interreligious dialogue is playing out, what the highs and lows are, particularly in relation to peace building. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to take 2 more, but from this group here, because I haven't been here in a while. There's the gentleman up there, if you can just, so that they see your hand, and then the lady with the scarf. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Victor Zhang from UN Environment. First of all, respond to back about the UN Environment Assembly. So yes, next week we are organizing the Environment Assembly, and one big event is the Faith for Earth, and we are organizing more than 10 side events. So I think it's a bit late, but if anyone is still want to come for our faith events next week, I think it's still very welcome. I'm happy to talk about that. Second, we want to talk about environmental degradation is of course, it's a big driver for war and conflict, but we also want to say that it's also a solution because we like to promote nature-based solutions to peace and security and to sustainable development and to addressing poverty. So we have done a lot of research on that, and we have also some practical on-the-ground experience. Anyone interested, we are happy to share our experience.
Okay,
and third,
thank
I
you.
would like to touch upon on gender-based violence. Something
Sorry,
very
I
close
have
and
to
dear
cut you. Are you asking a question?
No, just providing
So
solutions.
can I just say that as a commercial break, next week there's a conference. You can pick up the issues that my colleague is flagging up at the conference. Can I get the lady with the scarf? Thank you. Can you put your hand up so they see you?
Can you hear me? Okay. My name's Dr. Husna Ahmed. I'm the CEO of Global One, which is Muslim women-led international NGO. My question is directed at all the panel, because today, the whole day, people have been talking about leaving no one behind. And if we're talking about peace, and we're talking about finding peace and solutions, as a Muslim, and knowing that, you know, in terms of conflict, the Muslims are bearing a huge brunt of the conflict throughout the world now, especially in the Middle East. What's happening? What are your solutions for finding peace for the people who are, you know, the refugees and internally displaced people? And particularly for Swamiji, I mean, the very current situation right now between Pakistan and India with, you know, the Kashmir issue. You know, you've been very bold, and I've been very encouraged by the things that you said, Swamiji, today. But, you know, how are you, as a religious figure in India, you know, going to find some solutions and try and build peace, you know, between Pakistan and India? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that's also what I'm going to do. This is going to be like the last word from each speaker. I'll start with our last two speakers. You have 1 minute each, and then the others, you just have literally 30 seconds each to say something. I'm hopeful. I'm always hopeful, right? Yeah, if you don't have, okay, good. So Maria, and then...
Well, thank you, Laura, for your question. It gives me the opportunity to say more about the SUG guidelines. Why these guidelines are an example of interreligious action for sustainability? Because 8 religions, 8 faiths worked together in a meeting in SAG. It's SUG, the city. And they decided to write different investment criteria and strategies to enlighten what each human being is encouraged to do with its wealth to make a better planet, and in accordance with each one faith. And it has a double, a multidimensional impact, but I can speak about a twofold consideration. One is connected with the behavior of individuals, that how we can invest for doing good. And the second one is related to the investment of the institutions. And the good point is that if you see, you can Google SUG guidelines with a SIG, and you will see that there is not only a list of, because sometimes it's easy perhaps to see what is negative screening, you know, what is not good to invest because it's connected with corruption, with arms, but the issue is how we can identify the investments that are encouraged. And the SUG guidelines describe the perspective from different religions and also from the organizations that work together with these faiths, and is the different organizations together with UNDP and OECD had this meeting, and now they are working on the construction of a platform. You know, and the good point is that it's not only for the people that are part of these faiths or religions. I think that it's a path that started and that will continue because it links wisdom of faith with action. It's pure coherence, you know? You're welcome.
Faith and environment protection are very linked because it is an ethical story. It's not technical necessarily. Because when we see the 5 Ps, we see 17 indicators, 169 targets, etc., we find that they are describing the facts, but really to act in the field, religions, they have to be there. Seeing that the number of people who are affiliated to all religions through the world, and even the others, from the ethical point of view, even if they are not from any religion, ethically they cannot say no if there are some solutions to provide. Sorry, and I saw some question. What I said here, it doesn't mean that we have blackboard. C'est pas pour noircir la situation, comme on dit en français. C'est-à-dire qu'il y a beaucoup de choses qui se font. La communauté internationale va de l'avant à l'intérieur de toutes ces initiatives. Mais le rôle des religions, jusqu'à présent, il n'a pas encore démarré. C'est vrai que, par exemple, dans certains pays, comme le cas du Maroc, 600 mosquées vertes, où on a mis les plaques solaires, on a recyclé l'eau des ablutions, on a verdurisé dans les entourages, etc. Ça fait revivre un peu chez tous les fidèles qui viennent chaque semaine. Mais tout ça, ce n'est pas suffisant parce que, comme je disais, la notion d'éthique religieuse doit grimper à l'intérieur des échelons décisionnels. Il faut que ceux qui gèrent le capital, qui gèrent le multinational, qui gèrent le décisionnel d'aménagement de territoire, qui gèrent le maritime, etc., c'est là que la planète est en train de souffrir en gros morceaux. Mais les petites éducations d'ONG, etc., tout ça c'est bien. Je reviens vers la question de notre sœur là-bas. C'est-à-dire on est tous d'accord, il y a beaucoup de choses qui se font, il faut les remercier, il faut les encourager. Mais je crois qu'ici, on est en dehors du circuit décisionnel tel qu'il est. On a le droit un peu d'étaler la réflexion. On est à l'intérieur d'un auditorium où on peut avoir une bouffée d'air dans ce qu'on a à dire. Et ce n'est pas pour critiquer qui que ce soit, mais pour essayer d'aller de l'avant ensemble et proposer des choses effectives avec un plan d'action qui fera ramener une alliance de religions pour la promotion humaine intégrale. Pourquoi pas? Merci beaucoup.
Still listening to thank you very much. I will now just ask for if there are any short comments from the other speakers from earlier on. No, thank you. Thank you very much.
I'd like to just follow up a bit about what Maria Eugenio Di Paolo was saying, to link faith and action. And I think this is a very important part of interreligious dialogue. I had a privilege to organize between 2010 and 2016 with Cardinal Jean-Louis Tauan, who was the president of the Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue, and Monsignor Akache, who's here. We regret that Cardinal Tauan died suddenly last summer, and we miss him greatly. But we organized high-level religious summits of Muslim and Christian leaders. And most of the time, the leaders came and talked about the principles, and they all were very much based in common values. Cardinal Tauan always emphasized the need to teach peace with the young people, to help them learn to live peace. And I think that was his way of linking faith with action. And the same thing happens in terms of how do we find peace among the refugee groups. A few months ago, I was in northern Uganda at the Bidi Bidi refugee camp, which is housing 300,000 South Sudanese refugees. Some of them from the warring factions, the different ethnic groups that were at war with each other in South Sudan. And so at the camp, Caritas Uganda began to do dialogue among those different groups. And now they're inviting religious leaders from South Sudan to join them in that dialogue. So I think those are the kinds of things we need to do. And just one final thing, but I think it will address something our chairwoman has been very concerned about. Too many times we think that the lack of peace is only at the global level or between nations, and it's in our homes, and that's where the terrible situation of violence, especially against women and girls, is taking place. We have a large program in Malaysia among Rohingya refugees, and we developed a women's refugee protection corps, helping them to actually serve the other refugees who had been abused. But we recently added men to that. And the men have changed their family behavior because of how they know now what's happened to women and children in their own community. So I think those are the things we need to do.
Thank you very much. I'm running out of time. I was aiming to finish spot on at 6. So I'm going to invite Mr. Raymond Van Emmen to help us to sort of just crystallize the wide-ranging conversations that we've had this afternoon and some of the issues. So I'm really looking forward to hearing. He said to me, don't worry, Amanda, I'm just going to use 5 minutes. So I'm really looking forward to see here, in 5 minutes, what are the core things that we need to take away?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are losing the race against the clock. So I want to leave a challenge with you so that you think about it during the whole night and come back tomorrow to rediscuss it. Yes. Your role, your responsibility is to lead a huge movement towards a leap forward of humanity. We know that we must get to where we have never been before, on a new earth. It's a quoting from Naomi Klein's book, Not is Not Enough. And she was advocating in favor of a leap forward, a very big challenge indeed, but a big opportunity for humanity. Such a call for a humanity leap forward was already the aspiration of Teilhard de Chardin in the middle of the wars of the 20th century. As Naomi Klein stated, we know that the gap that separates us from our goals is so dizzying, and that the time that is left is so short, that small steps would not be enough. In the face of danger, we have chosen to come together and make an evolutionary leap. The challenge in order to succeed is to build new forms of empowerment and people's movement. In 2015, in Santa Cruz de la Sierra, Pope Francis said, "The future of humanity is not solely in the hands of great leaders, great powers, elites. It is fundamentally in the hands of the people, in their ability to organize." And that's what the Interreligious Action Plan that should be discussed on Saturday should come with. Pope Francis, addressing himself to these popular movements in Bolivia, gave in a way a roadmap for what I mean by new forms of empowerment and people's movement at the time where we have the new tools, the one of the digital era. He was proposing 3 goals. Put the economy at the service of peoples. Unite our peoples on the path of peace and justice. Defend Mother Earth. Well, let's put this in perspective in our interface action plan. What could be this action plan? Well, let me offer some suggestions. We need interface partnerships, a strategy which would be built on two main elements. First, all organizations willing to contribute to the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, including religious organizations, need to walk the talk. Yes. Walk the talk. And secondly, you need your organizations belonging to churches whatsoever to report on what you are doing. Transparency, accountability are your responsibility as well. And if you will convince, if you want to convince the others, those who are believers of your same religions, but in a matter of fact, acting against the development goals, because we have all enemies, under vertical commas, yes, in all religions, fighting for predatory delays, to use your wording. Yes. The only way to find a way to solve those problems is indeed to be able to show, to make visible what you will have been able to achieve. And what could be the chapters of such a report? Few chapters. First, finance. Finance is the first domino. And you need to keep in mind that churches own 10% of the investment funds, globally speaking. You can't, as religious organizations, pretend to deliver if at the same time those 10% are used in another manner. First, finance. Second, education. Churches altogether own 50% of schools worldwide. Bring together the youth organizations, bring together the schools, the business schools, the universities belonging to your religions, and you will be able to demonstrate that you can mobilize the youth in order to meet the objectives. Third, territories and land. Churches own 8% of habitable land and 5% of commercial forests. Agriculture, forestry, indigenous people, all these key topics are very much depending on this. You have some role to play. And the fourth chapter, of course, would be a word well known, and care. Care. All the initiatives you are dealing with, supporting the poor, the sick, the elderly, the handicapped, the migrants, so that no one should be left behind. And without your support and without your participation, the UN will never be able to meet the so-called 2030 target. Zero poverty, zero hunger, reduced inequalities. It will never work if organizations like yours are not decided to mobilize the means you do have. In order to do so, you need to organize interface dialogues at the level of the continents, the Amazon basin, countries. And you need to work together to build these multi-stakeholders and interface partnerships so that at the end of the day, your initiatives will become beacons of a new era, marked by new alliances and forms of cooperation, in particular between religions and believers, with the youth as actors of a new civilization, a civilization of love or empathy. And I hope, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, that the action plan to be debated on Saturday will shape this new era by innovating to move towards we have never been. Thank you very much.
I think you agree with me that there is nothing to add to that. I think that Raymond has thrown down the gauntlet, and the question now is, I think, for each of us as individuals, each of us as a religious group, faith-based organization, the UN, whoever you are and whatever you're representing. But the gauntlet is real, and the challenge is real. I don't want us to go away not being hopeful. So I want to use this privilege as a moderator to encourage you as I encourage myself on a daily basis. And I hope that you don't mind, but I would like to quote from the Christian Bible, Micah 6, verse 8. He has showed you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. I want to tell you that in the position that I sit in my organization, there are moments when I look out and I think to myself, is this doable? And then I remember there's a woman called Deborah that was raised up by God. And the Bible says she judged Israel. She was a prophetess, and she led Israel into war. And the Bible says to me, and during her time, Israel knew peace. I just want to say, join me, all of you, in thanking the fantastic and absolutely fabulous panelists that we've had. Thank you so much. And then I've got two announcements, but before the two announcements, I just want to, I would like to invite you to give yourselves a huge applause because you've stayed with us during a tough afternoon. So thank you so much. And then two announcements. So you will notice that right at the back there's a mural that is developing. Vanessa, who's our visual artist, has been doing great work out there, and I think she's going to continue tomorrow. But please, you know. And I would really encourage you just to have a read as you're going out, because actually it will help you to structure some of your thoughts for tomorrow. And then immediately after the closing here, there is a cultural artistic event. I think some of us heard people sort of practicing and rehearsing. I wouldn't miss it if I were you. Being in Rome at this venue near the Vatican, I mean, really, you know, I would say, you know, make sure that you go and you attend and enjoy yourself. And let me just say thank you for inviting me, and thank you for being patient. God bless you.
Scusate, due annunci. Adesso per andare all'Aula Nervi, Aula Paolo VI per il concerto, siete invitati tutti ad uscire da quest'Aula del Sinodo alla vostra destra. Per quelli che alloggiano all'Hotel RG